Have you ever wondered if the early Christians you read about in history lived in the same way as the stories portray? Or if there were hidden practices and secret teachings that transformed their lives in ways never spoken of openly? What if much of what we think we know about their faith is only the surface, and beneath it lies a network of mystical initiations, rituals, and knowledge meant to awaken the spirit and the mind? For centuries, these practices were deliberately concealed, accessible only to those ready to undergo transformation, and the ordinary followers were often kept in the dark. Imagine that the stories, prayers, and teachings you've inherited were only a shadow of the deeper experiences that shaped the most devoted early Christians. Today, we will explore those hidden initiations, the practices that allowed ordinary people to access extraordinary spiritual power, and why most of this knowledge was buried, forbidden, or forgotten. Some scholars believe that these initiations were not just symbolic ceremonies, but structured paths designed to awaken a deeper consciousness, revealing a world within and beyond the physical. The Gnostics, a mystical branch of early Christianity, emphasized personal experience and inner knowledge over blind adherence to dogma, and Hans Jonas and other researchers reveal that their rituals were practical methods to transform the soul. By the end of this video, you may begin to see that the early church was not just a historical institution, but a living community of seekers who walked a path of profound spiritual initiation, hidden from the ordinary eye. As you watch, ask yourself, how much of your own spiritual life is shaped by routine and repetition, and how much is alive with conscious transformation? Could it be that by understanding these hidden initiations, we can rediscover practices that awaken insight, power, and freedom within ourselves? If you are ready to uncover these lost paths of spiritual growth, subscribe to our channel and follow along as we reveal the hidden teachings of early Christians, step by step, and uncover the Yahrasiab, mysteries that have remained secret for centuries. While the stories of early Christians often focus on devotion, community, and martyrdom, there was another layer of practice, one deliberately hidden from public view. The ordinary teachings and rituals that reached the majority were only a fraction of the spiritual knowledge available. Gnostic communities and other mystical groups within early Christianity developed secret initiations that aimed to awaken higher consciousness and guide the soul toward direct experience of the divine. These practices were not meant for everyone. Only those deemed ready could participate. Some scholars believe that this secrecy was necessary because the power of these initiations could not be comprehended or safely applied without guidance. Those outside the inner circles received simplified teachings, leaving the profound transformative knowledge obscured. This concealment has caused much of history to forget the true depth of early Christian spiritual life. Hans Jonas and other researchers show that these hidden initiations were structured paths, each designed to cultivate specific faculties of the soul. Participants would undergo stages that prepared them for insight into divine truths, personal transformation, and liberation from ordinary perception. Symbols, rituals, and guided practices served as keys to deeper understanding, creating experiences that reshaped consciousness from the inside out. The Gnostics, in particular, emphasized that ordinary prayers and teachings alone could not awaken the inner spark. Transformation required intentional engagement, disciplined practice, and often secret knowledge. By presenting only the external forms of faith to the public, the early church or competing authorities effectively limited access to these empowering methods, creating a division between surface belief and profound initiation. Historical texts support this hidden dimension. Writings such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and other apocryphal works describe allegorical teachings, symbolic rituals, and staged initiations that guided followers step by step toward gnosis, or inner knowledge. Some scholars interpret these texts as manuals for transformative experience, where each lesson was encoded in parables, symbols, and metaphors to shield understanding from the uninitiated. The initiations were designed to awaken self-knowledge, reveal hidden spiritual realities, and integrate divine wisdom into daily life. The central problem, then, is not that early Christians lacked spiritual depth, but that most of these powerful practices were hidden, lost, or deliberately suppressed, leaving ordinary followers disconnected from the transformative potential the initiations offered. Symbols and concepts in these practices are essential to understanding their power. The use of sacred numbers, ritual purification, symbolic death and rebirth, and guided contemplation are all components of the path, each with a specific purpose. Participants were gradually introduced to increasingly profound knowledge, always under careful guidance, so that they could navigate the hidden dimensions of reality safely. The concealment of these methods from the broader community means that most modern interpretations of early Christianity miss the practical, mystical techniques that shaped the lives of its most devoted members. This is why historical evidence shows a discrepancy between the legendary faith of early Christians and the sophisticated, spiritual training that actually existed among those initiated. By understanding the hidden problem, the deliberate restriction of transformative knowledge, we can begin to appreciate the depth and sophistication of early Christian spirituality. These initiations were more than rituals. They were methods to awaken the mind, align the soul with the divine, and transform ordinary life into a conscious journey toward enlightenment. Ask yourself now, how many spiritual truths in your own life might be hidden beneath surface teachings? Could reclaiming the principles of these initiations allow us to reconnect with a deeper, more empowered form of faith, one that transforms rather than merely informs? The hidden initiations of early Christians were encoded in texts and rituals that mainstream institutions later suppressed or ignored. Manuscripts such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Apocryphon of James provide clues to these transformative practices, describing lessons, allegories, and rites designed to awaken the inner spark of the soul. These texts often speak in symbolic language, which at first seems obscure, but was intended to guide initiates step by step toward higher consciousness. Hans Jonas emphasized that these writings reveal a deliberate layering. Each teaching prepared the practitioner for the next stage, creating a progressive path of spiritual development that was both structured and deeply mystical. Some scholars suggest that the secrecy around these texts was necessary to protect the knowledge from misuse, and to ensure that only those prepared could engage safely with the transformative power they offered. Symbols played a critical role in these secret initiations. Numbers, sacred geometries, ritual gestures, and meditative practices were all integrated into the path, providing both instruction and protection. For instance, symbolic death and rebirth were often enacted to represent the shedding of ignorance and the awakening to divine knowledge. Gnostic concepts such as gnosis, the divine spark, and the archons were not merely theoretical. They were practical guides for navigating spiritual challenges, for understanding the unseen structures that influence human consciousness. Participants were trained to recognize subtle energies, discern hidden truths, and align their lives with the higher reality beyond ordinary perception. Each initiation was designed to gradually open the initiate's awareness, moving from outer observance to inner transformation. Historical evidence indicates that these initiations were more than personal experiences. They were communal and ritualistic, conducted under careful guidance. Elders or teachers oversaw the process, providing instruction, support, and correction as necessary. These practices created a strong sense of spiritual empowerment and self-mastery, far beyond what conventional teachings could achieve. By contrast, ordinary followers received simplified instruction, often limited to prayers, moral teachings, and basic rituals, leaving the transformative practices invisible. The concealment of these initiations explains why the extraordinary spiritual achievements of early Christians are rarely understood today. Their public image was carefully curated, while the true paths of inner transformation remained hidden. The turning point in understanding comes when we recognize that the purpose of these secret initiations was to awaken the human being to the fullness of their potential. They were not merely rites or ceremonies. They were active tools for self-realization. Hans Jonas notes that the Gnostics saw the material world as a domain where spiritual awareness could be cultivated, refined, and eventually liberated. By following these steps, an initiate could experience a profound transformation of consciousness, integrating spiritual insight into everyday life. The lessons embedded in symbols and texts were meant to protect, guide, and gradually expand the human soul, revealing that the hidden power within early Christian communities was practical, accessible, and life-changing for those who undertook the path. Reflect for a moment. How might your understanding of faith, spiritual practice, and personal transformation change if you discovered that early Christians possessed techniques to awaken consciousness that were deliberately hidden from the masses? How much potential in your own spiritual life might remain untapped simply because the knowledge has been concealed or lost over centuries? By studying the symbols, texts, and practices of these secret initiations, we gain not only historical insight, but also practical guidance, inviting us to reclaim a path of conscious transformation that modern spirituality often overlooks. The remarkable practices and initiations of early Christians did not survive intact in mainstream history by accident. Historical evidence shows that as the Church consolidated power, teachings that emphasized personal spiritual transformation, secret knowledge, and mystical experience were often labeled heretical. Texts containing these instructions were hidden, burned, or excluded from canonical collections, leaving ordinary followers with simplified stories and moral lessons. Hans Jonas highlighted that this suppression was not merely about controlling doctrine, but about shaping human perception and limiting access to practices that empowered individuals to awaken consciousness. In other words, the spiritual potential of the community was intentionally constrained, ensuring that only certain forms of faith and obedience were widely practiced while deeper paths remained secret. The distortion is evident in the way mystical texts were marginalized. Gospels and apocryphal writings that detailed stages of initiation, symbolic rituals, and inner transformations were either rewritten, hidden, or dismissed. The canonical narratives that emerged emphasized outward faith, moral compliance, and communal cohesion, rather than personal gnosis and transformative experience. The turning point, as Hans Jonas and modern scholars suggest, lies in understanding that these secret practices were not fringe curiosities. They were central to early Christian life, designed to awaken insight, freedom, and inner power. By recovering this hidden knowledge, we begin to see the true complexity of early Christianity, a tradition where the path of initiation was a deliberate journey from ignorance to understanding, from outer conformity to inner awakening. Symbols and coded teachings were a key part of maintaining secrecy. Numbers, metaphors, and ritualized acts concealed meaning from the uninitiated, while guiding prepared individuals toward profound realization. The suppression of these practices by institutional authorities created a dual reality: public faith, available to all, and secret transformation, accessible only to those deemed ready. This gap explains why so many modern interpretations of early Christianity fail to account for the extraordinary inner practices that shaped the lives of its most devoted followers. By recognizing who distorted and suppressed these teachings, we uncover the forces that kept transformative knowledge hidden, and we understand the true stakes of accessing gnosis in the ancient world. The implications for today are profound. Even now, our understanding of spiritual growth is shaped by inherited narratives that emphasize obedience over insight, repetition over personal transformation. By studying the hidden initiations, the symbolic systems, and the suppressed texts, we are invited to reclaim practices that cultivate awareness, discernment, and alignment with higher truths. Ask yourself, how might your spiritual life change if you integrated methods intentionally designed to awaken consciousness? Could reconnecting with these forgotten paths transform the way you approach faith, prayer, and personal growth? The turning point is awareness, realizing that what was hidden is not lost, and that by seeking it consciously, you step into the transformative legacy of early Christian initiates. The hidden initiations of early Christians are not just historical curiosities. They have practical implications for modern seekers. Today, many spiritual practices remain surface level, focused on repetition and routine rather than conscious transformation. By studying these ancient methods, we realize that true spiritual growth requires intention, awareness, and engagement with the unseen forces that shape our understanding. The practices of symbolic death and rebirth, meditation, and guided ritual were designed to awaken insight and align the soul with higher truths. Imagine applying these principles now, approaching faith as a conscious journey, rather than a passive inheritance, and reclaiming the inner power that centuries of suppression obscured. Hans Jonas and other scholars suggest that understanding these practices allows us to see faith as active participation in our own spiritual evolution. The initiations were more than ceremonies. They were tools for personal awakening, designed to help humans recognize the divine spark within themselves. By reconnecting with these teachings, we can transform ordinary devotion into a process of conscious growth, reclaiming practices that empower, illuminate, and liberate the spirit. Ask yourself, how different would your spiritual life be if every act of devotion was intentional, guided by knowledge, and aligned with deeper truths rather than inherited tradition? The most profound insight of these early Christian initiations lies in their transformative potential. These practices were not symbolic gestures or simple rituals. They were designed to awaken the full capacity of the human soul. Hans Jonas emphasized that the Gnostics understood the material world as layered with hidden forces, and that personal transformation required navigating these layers with intention and guidance. Each stage of initiation, from symbolic purification to ritualized death and rebirth, was carefully structured to shift consciousness, integrate divine insight, and awaken latent abilities within the initiate. The secrecy was essential because only those prepared could engage safely with the transformative power embedded in the rituals. Ordinary practice, devoid of awareness, could never produce the same depth of spiritual change. Symbols and coded teachings were the core of this process. Numbers, gestures, sacred objects, and ritual sequences were all tools to guide the initiate beyond ordinary perception. The initiations were designed to teach discernment, heighten awareness of subtle realities, and cultivate alignment with the divine spark within. Participants learned to recognize hidden influences, navigate spiritual obstacles, and integrate mystical insight into everyday life. These methods reveal that early Christianity was not just a moral framework or a communal institution, but a system of practical spiritual technology, intentionally crafted to awaken insight, freedom, and higher consciousness. The implications of this revelation are extraordinary. If we understand these initiations, we realize that spiritual life can be consciously directed rather than passively inherited. The tools of inner transformation are not myths, they are encoded, guidance for engaging with the unseen dimensions of reality. By studying and adapting these principles, modern seekers can reclaim the same pathways to personal empowerment that were once the secret of early Christian initiates. Your thoughts, intentions, and practices become instruments for awakening, capable of transforming ordinary life into a journey of conscious evolution. Consider your own spiritual journey. How often have you felt that traditional practices leave you unfulfilled, lacking deeper insight or transformation? The secret initiations offer a roadmap to unlock the latent potential within yourself, showing that faith is not merely belief, it is active, intentional, and transformative. By integrating awareness, ritual, and symbolic practice, you participate directly in the processes that early Christians used to cultivate insight, empowerment, and alignment with higher realities. Ask yourself, are you ready to reclaim this lost knowledge, to engage with your spiritual life as a conscious path of transformation, and to awaken the hidden capacities within your own soul? The ultimate revelation is that these initiations were designed for one purpose: the full awakening of the human being. They show that transformation is possible, even in the midst of a world shaped by limited knowledge and distorted teachings. By understanding the principles behind these secret practices, we gain access to a legacy of personal empowerment, spiritual insight, and conscious growth, a path that transcends ordinary belief and opens the door to direct, experiential knowledge of the divine. The question now becomes not whether these practices existed, but whether you are willing to engage with the hidden legacy of early Christians and reclaim the power to transform your life. Now that you've explored the hidden initiations of early Christians, it becomes clear that what we were taught about faith and spiritual life is only a fragment of a much larger reality. Hans Jonas and the Gnostics reveal a path of conscious transformation, where ritual, symbolism, and intentional practice awaken the human soul to its full potential. These initiations were designed not merely as ceremonies, but as tools for personal empowerment, insight, and alignment with the divine spark within. By reclaiming this lost knowledge, we recognize that spiritual growth is not passive, it is active, deliberate, and transformative, rooted in awareness and guided by ancient wisdom. Reflect on your own spiritual journey. Have your practices and beliefs truly awakened your inner capacities, or have they remained surface-level routines? The teachings of secret initiations challenge us to engage with faith as a conscious path, where each thought, gesture, and ritual contributes to the transformation of the self. By understanding the hidden methods of early Christians, we gain insight into a world where ordinary life intersects with extraordinary spiritual potential. Ask yourself, what hidden capacities lie within you, waiting to be awakened by deliberate, intentional practice? How might your life change if you approached faith as a journey of conscious transformation, guided by the same principles that empowered the earliest initiates? If this revelation has moved you, take action now. Write a comment sharing your reflections, a personal insight, or even a prayer of conscious intention. By participating, you contribute to a living tradition of seekers who keep these hidden truths alive, cultivating a community dedicated to awareness, growth, and the pursuit of gnosis. Each comment, each reflection, strengthens the network of knowledge and helps preserve the teachings that were once deliberately concealed. Remember, the journey of discovery does not end here. The hidden initiations of early Christians invite us to question, explore, and awaken. They show us that spiritual life is not just about following inherited stories, but about engaging deeply with the practices, symbols, and insights that unlock the true potential of the human soul. As you continue on your path, ask yourself, how will you integrate these teachings into your life? Are you ready to embrace conscious transformation and step into the hidden legacy of those who came before you? The invitation is open, the journey is yours to continue.